PSA 9s are one of the most misunderstood grades in cards in the hobby. For collectors, they're incredible, but for someone running a business, they quietly cap your upside. And the reason has nothing to do with grade obsession, it's more about buyer mentality and market structure. Let's break it down. Let's start here. A PSA 9 is a near mint to mint card. This means it has strong eye appeal, minor flaws, and you really cannot tell outside of the grade the difference between a 9 and a 10. But here's the key. A PSA 9 is often 30% to 60% less expensive than a PSA 10. So what are you really paying for when you buy a 10? You're paying for label prestige, perceived perfection, and essentially a status symbol. Visually, most PSA 9s look fantastic. For collectors who just want the card but not the flex, a PSA 9 is one of the best investments in the industry. You get the same authentication and protection as a PSA 10, but at a huge discount. If you're running a sports card business, here's the issue. The markets treat PSA 9s like a compromise. Not bad, just second tier. And second tier assets have a set ceiling. Why? Because the serious buyers who move the markets are often chasing 10s and low number parallels. When money flows to a certain player, it flows to the top first. This means if a prospect's hype spikes, the 10 could double, and the 9 usually lags behind. And when the market pulls back, a 9 gets squeezed even more. This is because buyers then upgrade to a 10, or they drop down and buy a raw copy. This creates a really uncomfortable middle ground. As a business, you want assets that have high upside and have high demand, and PSA 9s rarely sit in that tier. This is where it gets interesting. You'd think that a buyer would want a slab over a raw copy every time, but a lot of buyers prefer a raw over a 9, and here's why. In the current market, a raw copy and a PSA 9 copy go for essentially the same price. Many buyers would rather take the chance on a raw, clean copy and chase the 10 themselves, because the upside from raw to 10 is huge compared to just buying a 9 and hoping it goes up. In the buyer's mind, they think, why would I buy a 9 when I could buy a raw and hope for a 10? Or they think if I'm buying a slab, I might as well stretch to a 10 anyway, and then the 9 gets stuck in this middle ground. Ultimately, a PSA 10 feels complete, a raw card feels flexible, a PSA 9 feels final. You're locked into not perfect. That subtle psychology matters more than a lot of people think. Now, I'm not anti-PSA 9 by any means. They make a lot of sense when you're building a personal collection. You want a flagship player at a discount, you personally don't care about the grade, or you value the eye appeal of the actual card over the grade that's on the slab. For long-term collectors, PSA 9s can be smart, especially on high-end vintage or blue-chip players where a 10 price is just astronomical. Here's how I look at it. I'll absolutely buy PSA 9s for my collection, but for inventory at my business, I'm looking for raw with PSA 10 upside, or PSA 10s with liquidity. This is because I personally want explosive upside, I want the buyer demand, and I want assets that I can move in a pinch. As a serious business, you cannot afford to live in the middle tier. PSA 9s are not bad, they just have their own place in the market. For collectors, they're one of the best value plays out there. But for business owners, they do cap the ceiling. And understanding that difference is what separates a collector from a serious business owner.